Your next vehicle from Community Motors of Mason City.
Great service from 3 locations. Community on Monroe, Community Motors Westside, and Mason City Ford. 10 new franchises and hundreds of vehicles to give you more choices. Plus, Community offers an exclusive 3-3 warranty on pre-owned vehicles and 10-year, 250,000-mile warranty on new. Need more reasons why? Stop or visit CommunityAutoGroup.com.
Because nobody beats a community deal.
That's their job to I mean, that's a blanket term allowing everyone.
That's fine. I don't think that empowers the court to say that we're going to overturn. Day off of my job so I can come and see these people and beat it.
Now, I mean, what part of that, I mean, allows them to overturn that based on religious bigotry?
Come on! No, that's a vote of the duly elected representative. That's different from a court saying we don't argue with insane people. No, it's all right. That we're going to reject the vote of the duly elected legislature. There's nothing to the role of the Supreme Court is to simply say, all right, the laws violate the Constitution, we'll rule them unconstitutional. It's not unconstitutional for the state legislature to say we're going to define marriage as between a man and a woman.
Well, personally, I think it's unconstitutional to discriminate someone based on creed, based on religion, based on their thought process.
Move it. Move along. If he wants to run for the legislature, that's fine. He shouldn't do that from the bench. That is the difference.
But he's overturning the laws based on his power of the judicial power.
I know we're going to agree.
That's his judicial power. Then that's checks and balances. He's allowed to.
Get in there.
Like I said, very elegantly stated, but we're going to have to agree to
Thank you.
disagree.
Being respectful. Thank you. Thank you.
What'd you think of their vote on the same-sex marriage?
We didn't have one.
The Iowa Supreme Court vote on it. How'd that make you feel?
Terrible.
What do you want to say about keeping the judges in?
Turn the ballot over, mark yes.
Yeah.
Stop trying to buy justice. What's that mean?
Bringing in outside money to try and get our
We don't want the judges to be intimidated. They should follow the Constitution, which is what they did.
They are checks and balances.
That's on the same-sex marriage issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on any issue.
Any
issue.
Should
follow
be
the Constitution.
It'll spread. They did follow the Constitution.
They did. Yes, they did.
Voted out for upholding the Constitution.
That's right.
Discriminated against those that are on welfare, discriminated against blacks, discriminated against those of homosexuals.
Everybody.
Everyone they can think of, they discriminated against.
Who's that? Republicans?
Except for a white upper-class male.
Well,
Are you talking about Republicans?
Republicans.
Troy, right?
What's that?
Troy, right?
Yep.
the extreme right Republicans.
Extreme right Republicans?
Right. I know other Republicans who do not agree with that.
Right.
Tea Party is more than Republicans, I should say.
Sir, you from Louisiana? Sir, are you law enforcement?
Specific to Justice Wiggins. Now, I'm sure that just about everybody here is a high school graduate or a college graduate, and I'm sure maybe you had that wake-up call on occasion where you didn't study quite enough and you didn't pass a test. You know, the last I recall is you got below 66% on a test or a class, and you were probably down in that failing category. And if I recall correctly, in the latest analysis of justices in the state of Iowa, Justice Wiggins scored a 63. Folks, don't let a failing grade of Justice Wiggins, don't let Justice Wiggins be able to wiggle out of his failing grade. Thank you.
You'll notice that 63%, let's just be clear, is not a referendum on a bill. It's not an approval rating on a candidate. We would expect in the 60s or 70s on that. This is from his own colleagues. If you'll go to the Iowa Bar Association's website, Iowa Bar, I was on there last night and I had to chuckle. His own colleagues, and this is not an approval rating, this is a look at the administrative staff, or Bobby Jindal's administrative staff, only giving him 63%. That would be alarming. We can do better. And so Cynthia Moser is from...
First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone in Mason City, even those who don't agree with us, for coming out today.
That's right.
This is democracy in action. This is about free speech. And I understand this is an emotional issue. And anytime you have an emotional issue, I suggest that you try to remove the emotion and just stick to the facts. So let me try to stick to the facts, if you will. When we talk about the separation of powers, it is the legislative branch of government that gets to make the law. It is the executive branch of government that gets to execute the law. And it's the judicial branch of government to uphold the Constitution. Now, what happened in the Barnum opinion is when the court said, Iowa will be a same-sex marriage state, that is not their job, that's the legislature's job. The courts don't get to make law.
What part of the Constitution does it violate, sir?
The court said that if all 99 counties would follow suit, the court does not get to execute the law, only the governor gets to execute the law of the state of Iowa. This is an opinion that's never been executed. When the court said we're going to hand out rights the founders could have never imagined, they don't get to hand out rights. They don't get to amend our Constitution. Only we, the people, get to amend our Constitution. And some people will say this is only one opinion. Dred Scott was only one opinion that said blacks are property. Roe v. Wade is only one opinion that's now killed about 60 million babies. The Barnum opinion is only one opinion that's now marrying same-sex couples across the state. Ladies and gentlemen, the court went outside of its bounds. We need to hold the court accountable. We need to vote no Wiggins on November 6th. I've read a lot of scoring instruments. So when the Bar Association came out with their scoring instrument on Judge Wiggins, I looked at it very carefully. And Senator Barnes and Tamara Scott are right, he got a D-. But that's not all. When you read into that scoring instrument, the Bar Association, as peers said, he's arrogant, he's confrontational, he's not all that bright, and he's lazy. Ladies and gentlemen, that kind of a Supreme Court justice does not belong on the Supreme Court. We need to vote him out on November 6th. Please welcome our friend from down south, Governor Bobby Jindal. Thank you very much. It's great to be back in Iowa. I want to talk to you first of all about why I think this is such an important election. Even before I get to the retention election, this national election may be the most important election of our adult lifetimes. I want to start with the national election and work my way down to what's going on in Iowa. Let's start with this national election. You know, a lot of people will tell you there are a lot of economic reasons we need to make a change in Washington, D.C. And we can go through the broken promises. For example, we were told 4 years ago if we gave this president, we gave President Obama a chance, he'd get this economy turned around or he'd be a one-term proposition. Well, look at the facts. Well, that's one promise I'd like him to keep. Absolutely. That's one promise I'd like him to keep. Look at all the promises that have been broken coming out of Washington, D.C. They told us passing the stimulus bill, unemployment would be below 8%. It's been above 8% 43 months and counting. They told us, remember back then, they said that they had a plan. Look at what that plan has done to our economy. 23 million underemployed, unemployed Americans. In Iowa, over 30,000 fewer people with jobs when this president took office. Median family income dropped more than $4,000, dropped more than $1,000 here in Iowa. Net household worth at a 2-decade low. Our recent college graduates, half of them underemployed or unemployed. The list goes on and on and on in terms of broken promises when it comes to the economy, but it's not just the economy. Look at the spending and borrowing coming out of Washington, D.C. Remember, this president said he was going to cut the deficit in half by the end of his first 4 years. They're now borrowing more than $1 trillion every year. Over $1 trillion every year of deficit spending. Our national debt's over $16 trillion. Remember the health care promises. Remember they said they were going to cut the health care premiums by $2,500? Instead, they've actually gone up by almost $2,500. Remember they said if you like your health plan, you can keep it? Well, under Obamacare, as many as 20 million Americans may be forced to lose their employer-provided health care. Remember they said they were going to bend the cost curve down? Even CBO says health care spending will go up 2 percentage points more than without this law in 2014. Remember they said they weren't going to preserve and keep Medicare. Turns out that over $700 billion in cuts in Medicare are unsustainable and unrealistic, according to the government's own experts in CMS. The list go on and on and on. There's certainly enough broken promises, enough reasons to replace this president, make him a one-term president, but this election's even bigger than that. It's even bigger than broken promises on health care, even bigger than broken promises on the economy, even bigger than broken promises on the debt. This election is really about two very different views of our country, the role of the government, and how many taxes we should be paying. When you think about it, there are really two different visions for America moving forward. One, the president's vision, I call it an Occupy Wall Street perspective. It's all about demonizing those that have been successful. It's all about, in his own words, redistribution rather than creating wealth. Now, you think about it, every time the president gets off his teleprompter, every time he starts to tell us what he really believes, somebody from the White House has to go out there and say, well, that's not what the president really meant. Remember several weeks ago? That's almost like a full-time job. It seems to me there's somebody in the White House, that's all they do is go out there and say, that's not what the president meant. Several weeks ago, remember he said, look, the private sector economy is fine, it's the public sector economy we've got to worry about. The White House had to come out and say, no, that's not what he really meant to say. And then he came out and said, well, if you've got a business, you didn't build that in Virginia. And then again, the White House had to come out and say, no, he didn't really mean that. But you know, every time he gets off the teleprompter, we get to see what he really believes. And in 2011, he said that we were bitterly clinging to our guns and our religion. Well, I've got a message to the President of the United States, at least the people in Louisiana, and I suspect the people in Iowa. We are proudly clinging to our guns and religion in the state of Louisiana. Maybe he meant that as an insult, but I actually take that as a compliment. We've got plenty of both in the Bayou State, and I know you've got plenty of both here in Iowa. But you know, he's got this mentality, I call it the Occupy Wall Street mentality. It's this mentality that, you know, you're entitled to other people's property, that we're going to demonize those who've been successful, we're going to raise taxes on small businesses. There is a different vision of America that says, in America, what makes it so great, you're not promised equal outcomes, you're promised equal opportunity. What's so great about America is the circumstances of your birth don't determine your outcome as an adult. The reality is your zip code, your gender, your race, that shouldn't determine how well you do. What's great about America is every generation has the opportunity to do better than our parents. Let's not become the first generation that mortgages our children's future. Let's not become the first generation that spends and borrows so much. They've got fewer economic opportunities than we inherited from our parents. That's what this election fundamentally is about. Two different visions of America. Do we continue to believe we're an exceptional country? We are blessed to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Where our children should have those opportunities. We had a jury that decided to apply that penalty in the Kennedy case. This was, I won't bore you with all the details, but this was an awful, awful case where a man, a stepfather, not only violated and hurt this little girl so badly that she'll never have children again, but permanently hurt this child. 9-year-old child. Well, this case gets all the way to the Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court says that we're not allowed to use the death penalty in this case because there's a growing national consensus against using the death penalty in these types of cases. Now, when does the United States Supreme Court start reading Gallup opinion polls instead of the Constitution for making its decisions? And that's what's at stake in this election.
The way you can thank me is network everybody. We need to get Wiggins out of there.
Truth of the matter is, they did what the separation of powers calls for, ruling on the legality of legislation. The court and Justice Wiggins did not amend the Constitution from the bench. The truth of the matter is, they applied the Constitution. The Constitution remains the same. The truth of the matter is that removing more justices will not change the law. Only Iowa's legislature and Iowans can do that by amending the state's constitution. The truth of the matter is that removing more justices will only weaken our courts and deny individual freedoms and liberty. We must not let the opponents use voting out judges as protecting liberty, freedom, and justice. These are our virtues. They have been hijacked, and the opponents know how to twist that so well, tricking the voters into undermining the separation of powers. Vote yes for Iowa judges and our courts to guarantee liberty and justice for all. The courts are the protectors of freedom and equality. The claims made by the Vote No advocates are false. The truth of the matter is our fair and impartial courts maintain a level playing field for everyone. Justice should not be for sale to the highest bidder. What kind of court system do we want? A court system that issues rulings based upon public opinion polls, campaign contributions, and political intimidation, or a court system that issues impartial rulings based upon the rule of law? Do we want to know that we can bring our disputes to a court where we will be heard no matter who we are? Yes. In summary, the evidence is in. The truth matters. And we therefore urge voters to turn their ballots over and vote yes for freedom, yes for liberty, and yes for Iowa judges. Thank you very much.